Hello, and welcome to the series Exploring Careers in Technology's New Frontiers. This episode is titled Making a Technology-Based Product Work for Customers. My name is Adam Wisco, class of 2022 at Middlebury College, and I would like to introduce this episode's guest speaker. I am joined today by Nicole Fazio, class of 2011, who is a senior technical product manager for Alexa shopping at Amazon. Welcome, and thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
So, Nicole, this series explores a number of different professional areas involved in new frontiers in technology. Tell us a little bit about your organization, which I'm sure we all know, where it fits in within the technology field, maybe more specifically your role, and what the current and future landscape looks like, and what you do specifically in your role. That was a lot of things. I can recap if you want.
Okay, sure. So thank you so much for having me. I'm currently a senior technical product manager at Amazon, which I assume most of you have probably heard of. And I work specifically in the Alexa organization. So that is the voice assistant that some of you may be familiar with. It's an exciting space to be in, especially since it was invented a little earlier this decade. And we're constantly growing and building new features. So it's a really fast-paced building environment. I think as we talk about the future of voice, it's exciting because I think it will start to resemble more of somebody you can rely on every day. So think about being more conversational, more proactive, more personal, probably, as well as ensuring that customers are constantly being protected with their privacy. I think that's also been something that we've heard has been very important to customers. And so when you're thinking as a product manager about customer first experiences, privacy is always at the top of your list, to make sure that you're making customers feel comfortable and you're helping them at the same time. I can talk a little bit about my role as a product manager if that's interesting.
Definitely, please.
Cool. So as a product manager, my one and only job, not only job, but the most important part of my job is to build the right thing. That's it. Making sure that we're working on the right products to ensure that customers are getting value. And it can look a little different depending on which organizations you're in. So as a product manager in somewhere like the retail organization that supports surfaces like Amazon.com and the mobile app, it's a little bit more of a mature product, right? It's been around for a little bit longer, and you're not drastically changing the customer experience very frequently. And so in a product like that, you're probably working on smaller features that are used by millions or tens of millions of customers. So as a product manager, you're thinking about reliability of your product, making sure that you have good uptime, and that customers are able to interact with almost no latency. Latency is kind of the difference between when a customer takes an action and the computer responds. In an environment like Alexa, it's a little bit more entrepreneurial. And so as a product manager, you're building things that don't exist yet. It's sometimes what we like to call 0 to 1 products. And in that organization, your main challenge is figuring out what you're going to build. And that can come from a variety of different places and looking at different data. There's one resource I love, which is a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It's by this guy called Bill Aulet. He works at MIT Sloan, which is where I went to business school. He teaches a fabulous entrepreneurship course. And in less mature organizations, I think about product managers as being entrepreneurs, which oftentimes starts with talking to customers and figuring out what unmet needs they have, and how you can provide a software solution to help them solve those unmet needs. So that's a lot of the strategy part. The other exciting part about a product manager is the execution part. So when you get to start and build something, and that's where you're working with an engineering team and you're helping them define requirements. And that's what translates the strategy into actual engineering components. There's another book that I recommend. I actually have it here somewhere. It's called Essential Scrum. You can buy it on Amazon. I think there's a specific chapter in here. It's like chapter 9, maybe. It talks about more of the kind of technical execution pieces of a product manager's job. So if you're interested in a product manager role, I highly recommend reading that chapter. It talks about things like building and grooming a backlog, understanding how engineering operations work. So how do products actually get built? And some of your responsibilities as a product manager in the execution phase. So that it's product manager role is chock full of all these different varieties of tasks that you're responsible for, and it can vary a lot depending on the maturity of the product, as well as sort of where you are in the life cycle of a product.
Very cool. That was a great summary, I think, of a product manager role. That was very helpful. Thank you very much. In terms of, maybe we can do a little bit of a day-to-day basis, and then maybe on a broader basis, what are some of the biggest challenges or issues that you face in your role?
I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but figuring out what to build, that's the biggest challenge, because a lot of people are relying on you to have that right answer. And then you're asking an entire engineering team to go build what you think is the right thing to build. So I can give an example. When I first joined Amazon, I was on the Alexa Health team. And Alexa Health was a kind of a newer team, and we were figuring out some of the first products we were going to build. And it was incredibly challenging because healthcare is, it's like 20% of GDP with all these different stakeholders and all these different business models. And how could voice help one of these sets of customers and solve one of their problems? So that was a big challenge. And what the first thing I focused on is kind of the product that would make the biggest impact. So the largest set of customers. And after doing some market research and understanding the size of various industries, I honed in on health coaching via voice. And it's exciting when you have this kind of new voice technology at your disposal. And so what I did was we built a quick prototype with an engineering team, and we tested it out with about 150 internal Amazon employees. And what the software allowed you to do was talk to Alexa and say something like, Alexa, I just ate a yogurt and a granola bar. And Alexa would respond by saying, oh, that was 150 calories. You have 1,500 calories left in your budget. And then she would give you a nutritional tip based on some preferences that you set in the app, whether you're trying to hit a certain macro like fat or cholesterol or something like this. So she'd say something like, try a sweet potato later today to get those healthy fats up. And we didn't know how this was going to work, both from a technology perspective as well as is this something customers are going to do? And so by putting something in front of customers, having them use it, we found out that first, Alexa's ASR, which stands for automatic speech recognition, that is her capability to translate voice or actual sound waves into text. That was a challenge. I'm sure some of you who have used a voice assistant have maybe daily even encountered some issues with your voice assistant having trouble understanding you. So that was hard to do with a ton of different foods that customers haven't really been talking to Alexa about. So we didn't have a lot of historical data to build and reinforce those models. So we found out that there's kind of tech gaps. And if we're going to ask customers to do this 3-4 times a day, then she needs to work well. And what we found is about 1 out of those 4 times that folks were logging, she would mess up something, which would be really frustrating for customers. On the other hand, we surveyed those customers at the end of their experience, and we found out that they really enjoyed it. It was an easy way to log food. It was, especially now when folks are home, it was, they're home a lot for COVID reasons. And so they have voice assistants nearby. And it's much easier to just tell your voice assistant what you said than opening your app, finding the food, logging the calories. So we found out that customers loved it, and actually a special set of customers loved it. Those that wanted a general sense for how much calories they were consuming, but it wasn't right for customers that were really specific about their macros. They wanted exact, precise calories, because if you're saying, half a cup of yogurt, we're using a nutrition base in the back that may not actually know the Siggy yogurt or the Chobani yogurt that you had. So by doing this prototype, I think it was helpful in understanding both where there's technology gaps and also how customers respond. And I think in solving one of these biggest challenges for product managers of what to build, getting prototypes in front of customers early and iterating on them based on customer feedback is one of the most effective ways of actually solving some of those problems.
Very cool. I think I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget about is that, all the products that they're using, their laptop, all the different softwares that they're using are actually being developed by people. So, when we are using our Alexas at home, I think it's good to know that, there are people at the other side who actually care about what they're building and, are trying to make it as best as they can for us. I think a lot of people forget about that and think it's just like some abstract thing. So that walkthrough was super helpful, I think, for really getting into the details of how something's built. That was very, very cool. Awesome. Very cool. So kind of very much the glue, working to keep everyone and collaborate and get everyone organized on all, because there's a ton of different pieces that go into building something like that. So that's very cool. Awesome. What are some of the challenges?
I like that, the glue.
Good. What are some of the challenges that someone might encounter working in, you've touched on it a little bit, but maybe more specifically in an organization or directly related to the role itself?
Yeah. Another big challenge is getting consensus across all these different groups. So, you may have your designer come through and say, hey, we should do it this way. And then you have your legal team coming through and say, hey, we can't do it that way. We have to do it this way. But everything's advice. And you as a product manager have to decide which advice you're going to take and which advice you're going to ignore. And all while trying to maintain these relationships with folks because you're going to work with them in the future. So that is challenging for sure. And I think, understanding team dynamics, understanding the motivations that folks have for giving certain advice is helpful in digging through. And ultimately, your decision is kind of half based on, it's like art and science a little bit. You're using your intuition based on your previous experience, but also, maybe looking at some data to try and guide you. But that's a big challenge is building consensus, but also just sifting through a lot of the advice from a ton of smart people that are telling you different things.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, that definitely sounds tricky. And especially when, as you said, everyone's so smart around you, what's the order to take? No, that's great.
Totally.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. I'm really curious about your own experience from going from Middlebury to the career where you're at now. So can you tell us what you majored in at Middlebury and then maybe some things you did at Mid and then in between there and now?
Yeah. So I was an economics major at Middlebury, and one of the classes, I feel like I have to say this because it's helped so much with my career development, is Professor Wanava's class. I think it's called Applied Econometrics. For those of you who are interested in machine learning and AI, that is a fabulous class. It teaches you the math behind what AI and machine learning is. And you get to, I believe you get to do a project using regression techniques. And I think from it's allowed me to both distinguish myself as a person relative to my peers because I have this knowledge. and also it allows me to work on, things like Alexa that uses a lot of AI and a lot of machine learning, for which the basis is econometrics or sort of, I like to think. So that was a really foundational class for me, and furthermore, I got to use a lot of those things in a thesis that I did for my senior year with Professor Caitlin Myers. And so that kind of, again, reinforced my learnings, and I think definitely gave me a leg up. When I graduated Middlebury, I went to work for a consulting firm. I was looking for more lucrative jobs because I needed to pay off some of my student debt. And I thought, it propelled me into the business world. Both of my parents are teachers, so they don't have a lot of experience in the industry. And so I thought consulting would be an overall good introduction to a career. And it was. I was taught how to sort of stand up in front of a room of people and explain stuff on a slide, which is an important skill. There's a little bit of data analysis as well. So again, using some of the stuff I learned in econometrics. And it was kind of a good introduction to business. And then I went over to market research, and there I got to kind of build on both of those skills. So they hired me as a data scientist, where I didn't take any computer science classes, but again, this basis for machine learning that I had, it made it a lot easier to learn things like R and Python and SAS, because surprisingly, the code, it's not the hard part. The hard part is actually the math and the concepts, and the theory behind the models that you're building. So that came easier to me, and it was something I had to learn on the job. And thankfully, the job gave me the opportunity to do that. So they paid for some, I believe it was like Udemy classes about Python. You can always download R for free. And Stata, which is sort of the academic version of a lot of these programs, also helped when I was using Stata as an econ major back at Middlebury. And then I was finding myself wanting to explore the variety of what I was doing at work. So I was writing reports, and I was getting to present in front of a lot of people, but I wanted to have more of an influence on the business. I felt myself having a sort of vision, and I was this lonely, like, year 4 employee, and so I decided to apply to business school, even though I had no intention of applying to business school, when I first graduated from Middlebury. And if you love learning, this was my jam. I loved being back in business school. You get to, first of all, meet so many new friends and new people. And then you get to study subjects again, which, after you've been working for a while, you kind of take for granted. And that gave me a bird's eye view of how leaders solve big problems, which was fascinating. And I think that really helped me enter in as a product manager at Amazon, because it gave me all of these different frameworks about how to think about problems. And probably most importantly, it gave me the confidence to make tough decisions. I think without those learnings, I would probably be less confident in some of the approaches that I take that are not as popular.
And then from that, getting your MBA, did you then transition to senior technical product manager at Amazon?
That's right.
Okay, very cool, awesome. That sounds like you had a lot of fun. Definitely figured out what you do like. Made some awesome steps along the way. Very, very cool. This might going backwards a little bit. What do you think was really important in terms of maybe experience or classes or just the way you approached it and getting that first consulting job right out of mid?
Yeah, at the risk of repeating probably what a lot of other folks are going to say on these interviews, networking is, what does networking mean? It means talking to people. It means reaching out on LinkedIn and being like, hey, I'm interested in this job. Can you tell me more about it? It can be cold reach outs. It can be a friend of a friend. Networking is talking to people, and it pays off so much. My first job at Middlebury, I got through the career portal, and there was an alumni who had posted a job there from this consulting firm. And so I interviewed with her. We hit it off, and that really helped. Similarly, again, getting my MBA was a similar experience. So Amazon came on campus, and they specifically recruited at MIT. But you know, that one was actually kind of funny because they hired about 30 kids from our graduating class from our MBA, and I was the only one who landed in the exact team that I wanted. And the way that happened was because I happened to reach out to the leader of that team months before, because I was interested in healthcare and I was interested in voice. And I asked her to just talk to me about her job. And secretly, it was actually for a class. The class asked, the assignment was like, interview 3 people who are like 5 to 15 years ahead of you in their careers in various different industries, and get a sense of like what they do and whatever. So I got the premium version of LinkedIn so I could send messages to people. And I reached out to her, and you know, for every couple of messages I send, I get like, some people don't respond, and that's okay. And you have to expect that. But when people do respond, you form this connection with them. And not only do you get a better understanding of like what they do and what they like and don't like about their jobs, but then, you know, 3 months later, she's looking at this stack of resumes when she's recruiting at Amazon, and she sees my name and she recognizes that we spoke like months before, and she put me on her team. So that was one coincidentally that like happened to pay off big time. But networking, whether it's through school, whether it's through friends, whether it's cold invites on LinkedIn, is some of the best ways that you can spend your time.
So we've touched on this already in sort of career advice section, but given your experiences, what you know now, is there any other advice that you would give to current students to best prepare them to kind of enter maybe the technical product manager or the product manager role in general?
Yeah, I mean, my number one advice is always learning and being curious. So, you know, I didn't take computer science classes at Middlebury, but I did go and try and learn some programming language so I could execute on some machine learning analyses, like Python and SAS. And that helped a lot. It kind of allowed me to get a sense of what that work was like, and gave me a level up, I think, relative to some of my peers. But I think in general, the most important thing that I would say with careers and career progression is focus on your happiness. Seriously, like my first job, you know, hopefully not a ton of people are watching this who are with me, but like, it wasn't the perfect job. It like, you know, right. It was me trying out something. And I was lucky enough to get the job, but you know, I learned a lot about myself. I learned what I loved doing and what I didn't like doing. And then I try to optimize towards that. So that's why I moved to market research, because I loved the customer aspect of it and studying customers. And I love presenting in front of people. So I tried to do more of that, and I switched job. Then at Forrester, I was kind of getting stuck and felt like I wanted to do a more variety of different things. So I went back to school. And I think when you're constantly evaluating what's making you happy, you're going to be happier, and then you're going to be more motivated, and you're going to be doing good work because you're interested in your subject matter. So in terms of, I'm not the type of person who plans like 10 years out or even 5 years out about like where I want to be. I'm more of the person who's evaluating consistently what I like and don't like about my job, and then making a move on that. And I can honestly say that now as a product manager, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my role. I really enjoy what I'm doing.
Nicole, thank you again for your engagement in helping us help students to prepare for their first career destination. Really appreciate it. So this concludes this episode within the series Exploring Careers in Technology's New Frontiers. In closing, I want to encourage viewers to tune in to get career perspectives and advice from a number of professionals in a broad variety of organizations in our other episodes in this series. I also want to encourage you to tune into the other MIDDVantage series, which can be accessed through the Events and Programs tab on the CCI website. Thank you again for watching.